Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective. This week we're talking about practice some more, specifically the frequency thereof. This week's topic will be in the description of this video as always, so you can read it, but it is essentially asking us how often do we practice, and what do we think about pagans or neo-pagans who don't practice, and if they don't practice, does that make it still a spiritual path that they are on? So this definitely ties back into several weeks ago, several months ago. We did videos talking about orthodoxy versus orthopraxy, right belief versus right practice. There was an issue with my video, so it doesn't show up in the regular channel uploads, but I did get it posted later and it is unlisted, and I linked it, I think, in the following week's video. So I'll link it here for you as well if you didn't get to see my video on orthodoxy and orthopraxy, and I'll put it up in the end screen as well, because this very much goes along with that. And in that video, I talked about how, for me, it comes down to a balance of both, that I think it's important that we have the beliefs and we also have our own practice. So like in terms of deciding maybe people that we might work with in a group or people who we might consider part of our own little section within neo-paganism, how do we determine who is part of our little group and who isn't? And, you know, some people think, well, it's important that you have the same beliefs that we do. Other people say it's not so important that we believe the exact same things, it's important that we do the same things and that we practice the same way. For me, it's definitely a balance of both. So that ties into this question a lot. As, you know, as far as how much does practice matter? Beyond that, talking about this question in particular, pagans who don't practice, and is that still a spiritual path? I would really have to know what is meant by they don't practice. You know, is this us looking at other people and making judgments and assumptions about them because to us it doesn't look like they practice very often or at all? Or is this someone looking at their own path and practice, or lack thereof, as it may be, and saying, you know, I see all these other people doing X, Y, and Z, and I really don't do any of that. Am I still a pagan? Am I still on the same spiritual path as they are? And that gets into the topic of comparison, which we've also talked about, and a lot of stuff keeps going back to that. I think that's a really big overarching theme, especially as more and more people on social media are talking about, on different social media, are talking about these things. We have the opportunity to see a lot more of how other people are portraying their practice to the public. And that provides a lot more opportunity to compare ourselves and maybe judge ourselves. So I will say, as far as the hypothetical question that I just brought up there, playing that character of someone who is not quite sure how they compare to other people that they see doing X, Y, and Z. Am I still a pagan? Am I still on the same spiritual path? Well, no, you're not on the same spiritual path. You're on your spiritual path. So to me, it would really make a difference. I would have to know, this would have to go beyond hypothetical. You'd have to give me some specifics. We would have to look at, what does each individual person consider important to their path? What do they consider necessary practice for them? And then, are they doing that or not? Because the things that we think of as generalized, like, neo-pagan practice may not apply to everyone's spiritual path. You know, a lot of us may like to do daily tarot or oracle card draws. Well, not everyone uses cartomancy in any form, so daily card draws are right out the window. A lot of people like to do daily or weekly, as appropriate, devotionals to specific deities that they may have a close relationship with or consider themselves devoted to. Not everyone has that in their path, so they may not have any kind of devotionals. Or you can have devotional offerings to other forms of spirits that are not necessarily deity, but some people don't have anything like that in their path. So does that mean they're not practicing? Well, no, we have to go a step further and find out what is it that's important to that person's path, and what is it that they're doing, you know? So in that regard, and there are people who have asked me recently, you know, newer people to the path, compare themselves and judge themselves in this way too, even though they're pretty new and don't really know that much yet because they've just started studying. They're already judging themselves and comparing themselves based on these things. So there are some people I know, someone in particular asked me recently about their own practice and saying basically, what should I be doing at this point? You know, like, I'm very new to learning about these things. Not really sure how all this works yet at all, basically, but I feel like I'm not doing enough and that I'm like pretending to be pagan. Like all these other people, right, they do all these things. Well, I don't do that yet, so I feel like I'm pretending, or that people will judge me in such a way that they think I'm pretending. And I feel like if you're really new and you're just studying it, for me at least, like, I don't expect you to have like an in-depth practice within the first few months of your studying, or even within the first year. Like, especially the first year, if not more, is really about learning and trying out things and seeing what feels appropriate to you and what doesn't work for you, figuring out where your beliefs lie, if there is a specific path or tradition that may call to you that seems best for you at this time. And I don't expect that within all of that you will have this amazing regular practice for your life. Like, that's not what everyone has to be doing. And yet, it's what we see. We see everyone posting about their daily practice and all the wonderful things that they do, and it sounds wonderful, and maybe we would like to do that, but we're not there yet. Or maybe there are reasons in our life where certain things don't work for us or just don't apply to our path, you know, like I said, with the card draws or anything else that some people might do daily. Even if someone says, you know, I do a weekly ritual to do this, that, and the other thing, that form of ritual may not apply to someone else. So it's really difficult to answer for everyone because we're all different. And I feel like it definitely is one of those places where we can go into detrimental comparisons and judgment of ourselves and judgment of other people. For me personally, we've talked about daily practices many, many times on this channel. I have never in the past, like over a decade of conscious following this path for me, because I personally feel like I've been a witch kind of my whole life, basically. There were little things that I did as a child before I ever knew that witchcraft was a thing beyond fairy tale stories, that I did, that I feel like I identify as always having been a witch, but I didn't know about it as a specific path. So I've been consciously following this path, consciously choosing my own beliefs, my own practice, etc., for a little over a decade now. And in all of that time, I have never had a consistent daily practice that lasted more than a month at a time. Whatever I feel called to at any given time to try to do daily or weekly, any other kind of regular or semi-regular practice that is specific things that I would do on a recurring basis, ebbs and flows in what I'm interested in, you know. So I'll go for a period of a few weeks at a time doing the daily draws, because I do have lots of cards and lots of decks that I read with. And so I will go through a period of time where I have a certain deck sitting on my desk or on a table or a nightstand or whatever, and I will do the daily card draw thing. But I don't do it every single day, and I certainly haven't done it every single day over the past 10 years. There are also times where when I feel compelled to have my certain altars set up to different spirits or energies that have a big place in my path at the given time, and these things can change over time from year to year. When I have those things set up, I will have devotionals to them, and I will have either specific days of the week that I decide to do that, or it'll just be whenever I feel called to, or whenever I'm working with that energy, I will do something at their altar, whatever it is, whether it's just a little meditation, whatever. Burning incense, leaving another kind of offering, etc. However, pretty much every time I move, there is a period of time, several months' time, where I don't set those altars back up yet, because I'm trying to get used to the new space and deciding where do these energies fit in the physical space. And I still very much have my connections with them internally, but I may not set up their altars. And so if I don't have the altars set up, I'm not going to the altar and doing anything regularly. So there have been periods of time throughout the past 10 years where I'm very specifically interested in doing a certain thing as a daily practice. Gratitude journaling, for example, the longest I think I have ever been able to do that daily, every single day without fail, has been a month. And that's my longest sort of streak. And then I might miss a couple days and then go back to it, etc. So it really depends on what I'm feeling the most called to do at that time. Last year, there were, a number of months where I was really into studying the tarot, and then there were a number of months where I was going through my crystal collection and studying a lot about crystals and identification and things like that. And there was a few months where I was really heavily focused on studying herbs and plants that grow in my area and finding out what is native to this area, what was naturalized here, but what grows wild here, what are these plants around me, and getting to know them the same way that I got to know the crystals that are in my personal collection. And so when each one of those became my main focus, the other things were definitely still part of my general practice, but I wasn't working hands-on with them every single day while there was something else that I was working on every single day. So for me, it really depends. How regularly do we practice? Define practice for me. Define what you think it means to practice, because if your definition is how often do we do ritual as such, then maybe monthly if I'm lucky, maybe a few times a year. It depends. And it depends on if I'm able to attend someone else's ritual versus doing my own. If your idea of practice is doing something every single day, then I've never had that consistently. So it depends on what you mean by practice. And if you're thinking of practice as simply anything you do that is enacting your beliefs, so the practice that goes along with your beliefs, then every single day, all day, every day, that is all I'm doing, is living my path and living my beliefs. So it really depends. Because there are definitely times, I will say, that I have also felt compelled to judge myself because I see other people talking about things that they do every day, and I get down on myself for having such trouble being able to keep something up every single day. But that's also just part of knowing myself, which I feel is an important goal, and is the first goal of The Witch, written by Scott Cunningham, if that's something that appeals to you at all, the 13 goals of a witch. The first one is know yourself. And that's also something that we find throughout various cultures' mythology. So it's certainly not just Cunningham, but the specific list of 13 goals was published by Cunningham. And one of them is know yourself, or know thyself, which means a lot of things to much more people than just us. But that's just part of knowing myself at this point, is knowing that daily, every single day, things are difficult for me. So I no longer hold myself to that standard. I do what I do what I can as frequently as I feel is necessary. And there are times where I want to explore more daily practice, and then I do. And I do it for however many weeks it makes sense for me, however much I get out of it. And then I probably take a rest from that. And then I find something else that I feel like I want to do this a little more regularly, even if it's not daily, maybe once a week, things like that. And then inevitably that dissolves away as well, and something new takes its place. So that's just how it is for me. That's just me knowing myself and knowing that part of my practice. Something I do want to say, I recently finished reading the new Elements of Magic book, Elements of Magic, Reclaiming Earth, Air, Fire, Water, Spirit, edited by Jane Meredith and Gade Parma. It's a reclaiming text. It is basically a book version of the Reclaiming Elements of Magic class, core class. And I will be doing a video on my personal channel about it. I might be recording that video today, actually, but it probably will not go up today. But I want to mention it to you because there is a specific essay within the book. So there's multiple contributors to the book. There are multiple essays per section, and exercises, activities, rituals, trance, meditation, all kinds of things throughout the book that are themed around each element: earth, air, fire, water, spirit. And one of the things that I recently wrote down, and I was talking to that person who I had mentioned, said, I'm kind of new, but I feel like I don't do enough. I'm not really a pagan yet. Until I do stuff, what should I be doing at this point? I recently talked to them about this. There is an essay in the book written by Dawn Isidora. I think it's in the spirit section, if I'm recalling correctly right now, where they talk about their personal 5-point sort of formula for developing a daily practice. And so I wrote this down. It's something that I have started to keep in mind and maybe will help you as well. So I definitely recommend reading the book if you're interested in reclaiming tradition of witchcraft specifically, or if you're interested in just another way of learning basic building blocks, elements of magic practice. But yeah, so the 5-point sort of formula from Dawn Isidora is having some sort of gratitude practice, energetic practice, inward gazing, or like inner work, checking in with yourself kind of thing, an active practice or practicing activity, so literally some kind of being active throughout your day, walking, jogging, dancing, yoga, whatever it is for you, and then also a stillness practice. So that would be kind of like, could be meditation, could be while you're doing your energetic work or whatever, but specifically being still as a contrast to the active part of your practice. So in the essay, they talk about how this might look. And it might look like every night before you go to bed, doing your gratitude practice and listing the things that you're grateful for. And then maybe in the morning, you do some kind of energetic practice, whether it be a specific energetic tool that you know, or doing something like aligning your 3 souls, which is talked about in the book if you're not familiar with that, or aligning the chakras. That's something that more people I think are familiar with, and it's similar. Any other kind of energetic practice, grounding and centering is a very basic energetic practice that I think most people have at least heard of. So anything. And then maybe throughout your day, you get in the active practice, you get in the walking, maybe you take the stairs instead of the elevator everywhere that you go, etc. And then incorporating some time for inward gazing, which can be while you're in the shower, while you're doing dishes, while you're, cleaning the house, folding laundry, whatever. Like, you can incorporate it into other things so that it doesn't feel like you're taking extra time to just sit around and think about yourself. So, or it can be just 5 minutes that you set aside to sit quietly before bed, maybe before you do the gratitude practice or after you do the gratitude practice, to check in with yourself and see how you're doing. Or maybe you do that all throughout the day, everywhere you go, every time you have a transition between things, or if you're in the car or on public transportation, you take that time to check in with yourself. And so whatever it is for you, and then fitting in the stillness practice wherever it makes sense for you. And it doesn't have to be something that's in the morning where you do all 5 steps, or at night before bed you do all 5 steps. It's something that they encourage in the essay to work into your life wherever it makes sense for you. And it's not really important the length or the duration of those things. It's just important that they are there and that you feel like you are getting something out of them. And again, this is not like you have to do these 5 things to be a pagan or a witch. This is Dawn Isidora's personal recommendation based on the way that they personally like to put it all together. So if you notice, none of those are pull a card from a tarot or oracle deck, and none of those are perform a full-on ritual. It's more about things that are helpful and meaningful to your everyday maintenance of your spiritual self, sort of. So I really liked that. I felt like that would be really helpful for me and possibly other people. So I have started keeping that in mind as I go throughout my day. I mentioned I've had the practice of gratitude practice for quite a while, but not every single day. So that's something that bringing it into every day again would be part of that. And maybe not writing it down every time, but just remembering to think about it and, whatever it may be. And that can be something that's done while you're doing other chores as well. If it's just a mentally listing the things or even speaking them out loud, it can be during something else that you're doing. It doesn't have to be journaling it before bed, which is what I did before. Is I have a little journal that I would write the things down in, which I like because then I can go back and look at them. But if I'm not writing it down, that doesn't mean that I can't still be doing it, So those are just some things that help me. Again, that's part of an essay in the Elements of Magic book. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, although this video is longer than I thought it would be again, in Weave the Liminal, Living Modern Traditional Witchcraft by Laura Tempest Zakroff, which I just uploaded my review, first impressions, favorite things about the book video to my personal channel a couple days ago. One of the sections in that book, Tempest talks about practitioners versus participants. And I just feel like that is also a discussion that would be interesting to the person who asked us this question this week, and anyone else who's interested in figuring out for themselves, am I doing enough to feel like I am participating in the community as much as I want to be? And I even just said participating. But yeah, so the difference between being a practitioner and being more hands-on and like developing your own path, or being a participant, maybe your thing is that you attend rituals that other people do, and that's how you feel that you are bringing your path into your everyday life. Again, every day, not meaning daily, but like into your life in general. Maybe your thing is going to other things and participating in them and supporting people in that way and getting those spiritual benefits for yourself through that. Maybe your thing is being more of a hands-on practitioner and developing things for yourself. That is a very basic paraphrase of what Tempest says in the book. I recommend the book. So specifically that section about practitioner versus participant, I think is interesting and relevant to this conversation. That is where I will leave it for you this week. I will see you next time. Next week is subs week, so I will see you the following week, next month. And we're coming up on the collab's 10-year anniversary, which is just insane to me. So thank you so much for being here, whether you've been here for 10 years or 5 years or 2 years or 2 months. Thank you so much for being here, hanging out with us. I'll see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.